Thanks, Senator Blackburn. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much. Thank you to all our witnesses. Welcome to Mr. Rhodes from 3M company in my home state, and good to see you again, Mr. Rhodes. Thank you to the chairman and to the ranking member for holding this really important hearing. It couldn't come at a more important time, as you point out, with the Supreme Court decision with 13B. Mr. Kaufman, in your testimony, you highlight that the FTC has sent out more than 350 warning letters directing companies to remove deceptive claims from fake coronavirus treatments to ads for products that were never delivered. How do these companies react to these warning tools, and why is 13B so important?
So the companies, to their credit, to the extent that we want to give them credit, have been very responsive. The response has been overwhelmingly positive, and within 48 hours, the claims are removed. So it has been highly successful from that perspective. But in terms of 13B, there is a lot of litigation we have ongoing that relies solely upon 13B for monetary relief. So rather than getting millions and millions or tens of millions of dollars for consumers, we will be stuck getting nothing if there's no congressional fix to.
And do you have any sense of how much money could be at stake, a range? I know you can't put an exact dollar figure.
So, well, for the past 5 years, we've given back $11 billion with a B dollars back to consumers. So I would estimate it's certainly hundreds of millions per year. That seems to be a fairly conservative estimate.
And that's going forward, of course, too, not just going backwards.
Correct.
And because of the pandemic and some of this fraud that's going on that we've identified, is it possible you'd even have more than usual?
It is certainly possible. We are always looking for the cases that cause the most harm to consumers.
Okay, very good. And Professor Kovacic, thank you for joining us again. You recommend a significant increase in the FTC budget in your testimony. I agree with that. You know, Senator Grassley and I have this bill, the Merger Filing Fee Modernization Act, which time has come. It would not be everything. A lot of what you're talking about, I think, would belong in the appropriations process. But what this would do would increase the budget of each of the FTC and the Antitrust Division by $67.5 million. And it's paid for, actually, in this case, not by taxpayer money, but by an increased merger filing fee on the biggest deal. It actually helps some of the smaller deals. And I call for even more, of course, a $300 million increase to the FTC budget in the appropriations process. But could you go even further? Could you talk about why this is so important at this moment of time, not just from the pandemic fraud cases you're seeing, but also from what you're seeing with those antitrust cases? I think it's so important that the FTC, under Chairman Simon, brought the Facebook case, but I bet that you could use nearly all the personnel in the FTC to work on those cases, and then we'd have no one left for anything else. So could you talk about the importance of this increase in budget?
Yeah, thank you, Senator Klobuchar. I'm thinking from my perspective as someone who started his career at the FTC in the 1970s, and I have watched since the efforts of our public institutions to do expansive, ambitious things with modest resources. And I think as a starting point as a nation, we have to realize that if we want the equivalent of superior results, we've been talking in the last couple of years about the equivalent of a public policy moonshot to put competition law in a much different place, consumer protection in a much different place. We look at our experience that with NASA, that was expensive, but it was worth it, arguably. And I think to have the conversation that says it is worth it for our nation to spend what it takes, not just in aggregate numbers, but to recruit and retain the personnel that we're going to need to drive these programs home successfully.
Thank you.
And I think if we're not willing to spend more, and suppose we don't spend triple the agency's budget, if we don't take the steps that you have suggested, step by step, I think we're going to find ourselves in a chronic position that we do in public policy, where we have grand policy aspirations and we scratch our heads and say, why isn't it working? Well,
Okay.
In part, it's not working because we're not willing to pay for it.
Thank you. Mr. Rhodes, hometown company, in your testimony, you note that 3M partnered with the U.S. Department of Homeland Security to help seize approximately 11 million counterfeit 3M N95 masks. And in January, 3M helped Minnesota avoid buying nearly 500,000 counterfeit N95 masks from a fraudulent vendor. Can you speak to the important role of public-private partnerships in combating fraud?
Yes, thank you for the question, Senator Klobuchar. That has been an integral part of our efforts from the beginning in processing those 13,800 reports, forming close partnerships with law enforcement and with agencies has really allowed us to extend beyond what we can do with our civil litigation authority. And the opening comments I thought were spot on, that the criminal enforcement really helps to make the difference to stop the bad actors. And so that's been a critical part of our efforts from beginning last March, when we sent a letter to the Department of Justice, to the National Association of Attorney Generals, National Governors Association, reaching out. We conducted briefings, formed working relationships with the DOJ task force, with Department of Homeland Security Investigations and their National IPR Center, as well as Customs and Border Protection. And those have really been among the most effective actions that we've been able to make.
Thank you. Thank you. And just last, I'll just put this one on the record because my colleagues are waiting to ask questions. But Ms. Patton, thank you for your work. And I will say, Senator Lujan and I have done a letter after a hearing that he conducted on misinformation on vaccines, and I'll follow up with you on this, but just some astounding findings that maybe if we could take 12 accounts down or get the social media companies to do it, we would be in a lot better place. So thank you.